This is episode 61 of the Wilderness Locals podcast. On this episode, my guest is Chris Schultz. I can't say enough good things about Chris. He's a phenomenal bow hunter, a great dude, and an excellent father. Just an all-around great human being. This podcast is brought to you by Kifaru International, the toughest hunting gear on the planet, bar none. Frontiersman gear, high quality, completely custom, handmade knives made in the heart of the Peace Country. And as always, we're brought to you by Just Shooting Arrows, BC's premier archery shop. We should give people an introduction here. I'm going to cut a bit of that off the front of this when we were talking goatee stuff, because some of that is not good public record, but you're who are you? What do you do? And how did you get started being one of the best bow hunters on earth?
My name's Chris Schultz. I live in central BC, and I'm actually a mechanic in Prince George, so that keeps me busy for most of the year. As far as getting started in hunting and whatnot, I definitely grew up in a hunting family. It wasn't something that we really had the opportunity to do a ton of. My dad was kind of like a typical interior moose hunter, go out on the weekend, a couple weekends a year and see what's walking around from the truck and whatnot. And, we didn't get to go out a ton. So then it kind of just evolved from there. Like I always had this passion for it. And then I got an older brother who's a couple of years older. And as we, got into our teen years and started driving, we started, being able to go and try some of this stuff ourselves. So a lot of it was somewhat self-taught. We just kind of winged it back then and didn't really know what we were doing and made a pile of mistakes along the way. And then, eventually started having some success. And, it's been a cool journey for sure. All that was done kind of pre-internet and everything. So there wasn't a ton of information out there back there as far as, even how to gut a deer or a moose or whatever. So it was a lot of, reading books or, hunting magazines and stuff like that. And then, I don't know, the archery thing, that was kind of one of those things that, as a little kid, I had a little fiberglass bow and arrow, and I'd launch arrows in the backyard since I can remember, and then eventually progressed to some compound stuff, and I'd shoot in a local club here as a teenager and stuff. And then eventually started out mostly using archery as extending the hunting season, really, accessing some of the archery only seasons and areas, and then just fell in love with it eventually, had some success with that, and then eventually started kind of leaving the gun at home and using it on areas where a guy could use a rifle still. So I still do rifle hunt. I still really enjoy it. It's a great tool and it has its place, and I'm definitely not against anyone rifle hunting, but just for now, it's just become something that I just love archery hunting so much that I'm okay not, having a little bit lower success or whatever, just for the sake of having a chance with the bow and seeing the efficiency of this new equipment and stuff. It's pretty awesome, right? We've come a long way. So
it's pretty wild, how good modern bows are.
Oh yeah. No, I was, going back to the first bow that I actually hunted with, it was all brass pins, and I'd go to the local hobby shop and try and grab some glow in the dark paint and put a little bit of paint on my different brass pins so I could identify what pin was what, and no containment rest. So you're trying to draw and your arrow's falling off, and
Oh,
and then
wow.
aluminum arrows. Every time you turn around, your arrow's bent. So you're trying to straighten your arrow. And yeah, we're pretty spoiled now for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Yeah.
So to give folks some context, you and I became buddies through Ronnie. Kind of since I started hunting, Ronnie always talked about his Prince George Rockstars, and when the yearly text messages would come in from Ronnie, he would always show me, and I was like, who are these guys? And like, it's like caribou with bow, elk by bow, everything by bow, and I'm like, who are these guys? They do anything but hunt?
Yeah, no, that's right. Ronnie's a great mutual friend. I've known Ronnie for a lot of years now, and that guy, he could say what he wants, but that guy's an absolute killer of his own, right?
Oh yeah.
So I don't need to tell you that. He's a great guy. Actually, the first stone sheep I ever killed was with Ronnie on a hunt way back then, So it's pretty neat thinking about some of those stories too.
Yeah, it's cool. It's it's funny how in hunting, stuff always kind of comes full circle. You hunt with people, and then next thing you know, you're kind of doing the same thing with other people, like helping them out, right?
That's right. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. I'd love to.
And it is a small community too, right? For sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The community of guys that are good guys that want to help each other be successful. It exists. It's cool. When you first start hunting, you're like, everybody on the podcast knows I started hunting as an adult, and you spend a great deal of time trying to figure out where to start. And then if you're fortunate enough to have a Ronnie or a Chris or a Daryl or whoever, in your life, then you kind of get to augment the process a bit with other people's knowledge. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I wasn't exempt from that either by any means. I had mentors that even if I didn't, necessarily go on the hunt, I'd go over for coffee with them, some of those old timers that, never will be on social media or anything like that, just to sit back and listen to those guys and hear those stories, right? It gives you a fire for sure. And that was definitely, the motivation for myself to, move away from the, get into some of the more of those like adventure hunts, right? That kind of backpack, whatever, just reading stories and talking and hearing that, it was just like, oh man, I got to do that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of how I got into hunting in the first place too, is just hanging out with Ronnie and working with him and hearing the stories. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. This is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, I'd love to hear about that first stone sheep hunt that you went on.
Yeah, that was, it was one of those scenarios where we're exactly that, where I was just talking about, I had an uncle of mine, a great uncle, I guess he'd be, and his knees were blown out and he was getting older, and we just went over there one day, my brother and I, and, what we lacked in experience, we definitely made up for in enthusiasm, right? So he kind of came up to us and he says, hey guys, like, I'm going to give you guys some stuff and show you some stuff that I've hunted. This is way back in the 70s kind of thing. And he said, I'm going to show you some stuff. And, if you're ever interested in like stone sheep or whatever, this is a good area or whatever. And my dad had actually done a couple stone sheep hunts in the 70s as well.
Oh, wow.
So he didn't have, as much success. I think they did get a ram or two. He didn't personally, but, with his group, but his areas wasn't as like, I don't know. It just didn't seem something that I was that interested in. But then we heard these stories from this uncle of ours, these massive rams and all this other stuff. So, he kind of gave us some X's on the map. And then at the same time, I knew Ronnie, and, we'd see each other every once in a while, and he would tell us about his sheep endeavors, and he'd already killed a ram, so it was, amazing. Oh wow, he's showing us photos back then, right, and telling us stories, and then we started talking, and your sheep info is you're pretty tight-lipped, but we started both opening up a little more, and before you knew it, we realized that we literally had the exact same info, like literally to the rock kind of thing, right? So then we said, well, if we both know this and whatever, like, let's do this. So we planned a hunt like the next year. The three of us actually went. And
John went too, right?
Yeah, John Epp, Ronnie, and myself, and so we went in there, and I think we had 2 weeks or something in there, and pocket full of tags, but sheep was really the thing we were interested in, and we went up, and I actually killed a ram. I can't remember how it all worked with who got order of what, but seen some rams, and we went up this draw, and things happened really fast on that one. It was a very distinct, he's just a small ram broomed on one side. So we were very familiar with what he was and what he looked like. And he was quite a ways over the nose, even though he's a tight young ram. So we knew him pretty well. We actually ended up bumping him in the straw, same old thing where you're probably in too good a shape. You're moving too fast, and you should not glassing and moving too fast, and bumped this band, and they ended up kind of blowing up and stopped to look back. And a few shots later, I had my ram, so that was amazing. So we ended up going back, regrouping, went back to the base camp, and then went back even farther than Ronnie had ever been. We ended up going into kind of where my intel showed a little bit more, like Ronnie hadn't really explored that area, but that's where my intel said, you definitely want to check that out. Yeah. So we went into another valley, and man, it was amazing. We got into quite a few rams there, and Ronnie ended up killing a beautiful, beautiful ram, like just a flaring, just amazing ram. So yeah, we ended up getting 2 on that trip, and that was literally, I think that was my second stone sheep hunt or something like that. So it was, I didn't really know what we had or anything at that point, right? It's just like, oh yeah, you just kind of go up there and kill a ram. I don't know what the big deal is, but found out later they're not always like that. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's funny. That's super funny. Oh man, that's awesome. That's a wicked story. Yeah, Ronnie's told me that story too about you guys having the same info on that area, and when you guys came to realize it, that's too funny. I've had that happen too with buddies in different country, and then actually a buddy with a blacktail spot that I was working. He started showing me photos of deer that I had recognized. I was like, oh geez. And I was like, I don't think I can say anything. Like,
yeah, exactly. Right. Why do I have photos of that buck too? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, I don't have any photos of them. So I know they're not in the exact same zone, but I know they're neighboring. It was pretty funny. And,
oh yeah, I've had that same thing with local deer here for sure. There's not a ton of deer. So all the good ones, lots of guys have photos of, right? So,
oh yeah.
That's it's a sad day when you see a field photo with your buck in it.
Oh yeah. Wasey talks about that in Alberta, because he's on I don't know how many acres they're on there, but he's on private land there. And he said in Alberta, like, guys post photos on Instagram of a good deer or whatever, and like people will figure out where it is from the photo, and hunt the neighboring property and stuff like that, because everybody knows where you are if you're hunting your own land, right?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, but I know that stuff definitely is happening for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, but yeah. So from there, stuff kind of evolved with you pretty quickly. I mean, I think pretty quickly anyways. I see a pile of different animals here that you've gone and chased.
Yeah. I've, the sheep bug bit for sure. There's, no denying that. It's still bit and stuff. But man, we live in such an amazing province that we have I go on these rabbit trails of, I got to get a caribou, or I got to get an elk or sheep, or, it's just amazing. And so I've definitely, had the privilege of hunting a bunch of different stuff in BC, and so, and having a family now and stuff, I don't have an abundance of time. So I kind of got to choose, okay, am I going to do a sheep hunt this year or am I going to, try and go after a caribou or whatever? So yeah, the last few years I've definitely been, trying a bunch of different critters, and it's just such a blast. Everyone asks, well, what's your favorite animal to hunt? And I heard one of the bigwig, famous hunters say whatever I'm hunting at the time. And that's kind of me, right? Like if it's black bear or goat or sheep or caribou or deer, it all has its unique thrills and challenges for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. I often am talking about that on the podcast, about how lucky we are here in BC with so many different things to chase. Was 2015 your first caribou?
Yes, I believe it would have been. Yeah.
Nice. Is that a rifle? Oh,
yeah, that was a rifle one. Yeah, so that was being on sheep hunts and seeing legal bulls and just never pulling the trigger because I'll do it another day. And 2014, I sit on a wildlife committee here for a local wildlife conservation organization. And
cool. What's that called?
So Spruce City Wildlife. Cool. It's a member of the BC Wildlife Federation. And so it's pretty neat. We're involved in some season proposal stuff and all kinds of grassroots stuff. And so you're kind of in meetings with some of these bios, and a friend of mine was one of the bios here for a while. And so you kind of hear rumblings of the caribou thing before it really made the main thing. So main media. So it was one of those things that we said, you know what, guys, I just don't trust the government decision or science-based modeling at all. So if we're going to do this, let's do this now. So we went out, and I had my bow with on that hunt, and it was actually we didn't get to the lake that we wanted to fly into there. So we ended up having to walk a long ways, and we had bows and rifles, and we were just kind of alternating, and I ended up rifling that one.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it was great experience and everything. And then it was one of those, well, I got one with the rifle. Now what? Let's try and up this with a bow. So chasing those, everyone thinks caribou are dumb or whatever. And to a certain degree, I think they are, but man, try and chase one with a bow. And that has got to be one of the most challenging animals in BC to actually successfully take with the bow and arrow, I think.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's just, there's no rhyme, no reason to what they're doing, when they're doing it, why they're doing it. They're just always moving. The only ones we've actually killed with a bow, we finally got them to bed for any amount of time, and then we're able to move in on them. But most of the time, they're just, in bigger herds, moving around and trying to get in on. Lots of times there is only one legal bull in the herd or whatever, and he's never the right one in the right position. And but man, that's what makes them so fun. They're just amazing to hunt. Yeah,
that's a big fear of mine, that the caribou hunt goes away before I get to kill one, and even more so now with hosting Wacy here in BC. I'm scared they're going to go limited entry before he gets a chance at him too. So
Yeah. No, I know. Like I said, that was 2015 when we were already feeling that, and I mean, there has been changes come down since then.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, obviously we're still able to hunt the majority of the populations, and I'm not against like stuff changing when science says that, absolutely. But it's just, we could have a grizzly hunt 2.0 on our hands here too, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's I don't know. It's one of those things, right? It seems to spin wildly out of control when stuff like that starts getting momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I highly recommend it. You guys got to get on that.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll see. We're going to be not far from some caribou country on this next hunt here. So
yeah, you bet.
Maybe we scoot down the highway a little ways and see if we can't hike in. But
yeah,
that's probably an offline conversation.
Yeah, we can discuss that at a different time.
So what as a guy that's, taking caribou, goats, sheep, moose, deer, I mean, you're crossing a lot of stuff off the list here. What's what turns your crank these days? Like what keeps you up at night when you're thinking about the fall?
Right now, the last couple of years, I've been on the rabbit hole of elk, and it's been pretty awesome. I'm definitely the guy that absolutely loves moose hunting. It's one of those things that, moose are always you just come up and just shoot it from the truck, and it's kind of an overrated, looked down upon species in my opinion. But man, when you start, especially when we started archery hunting them and interacting and calling them in and living in the, central BC, that's kind of what we had. So I definitely cut my teeth, learning wind and rut activity and all this stuff with moose. And so I just was having so much fun with that I didn't really put that much time or effort into elk. So the last few years we've, started doing that, and the family just like devours the elk meat. So it's an easy sell to go for a weekend or whatever to try and cut a tag on an elk. And obviously they're just a riot to hunt as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. And then right now, this year it's going to be, I'm going to try and kill an archery goat. That's my, that's on my bucket list right now. So
nice.
Yeah.
I think you're going the same time as us, the end of August, right?
Yeah. I think things have moved a little bit. I think we're going kind of more mid-August now. We don't even have our dates totally settled yet. But
well,
we ended up scrambling a bit. Things change a bit with some draws and stuff, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Are you going with your brother?
No, I'm going with, I was supposed to go with one of our good hunting buddies, and we had everything pretty much dialed. And then he actually pulled a bison tag. Whew. So he's kind of limited for time off. So he had to pull the pin on that. So I'm actually going with another friend of mine who lives out west. He's actually never killed a goat. So I'm going to take him, but he's going to bring a rifle and I'll bring my bow, and hopefully we can get him his first goat. So yeah, it's going to be a good time.
That's awesome. I mean, the first goat thing seems like, when you're looking at it from having not killed a goat, or maybe have not being in that much goat country, it seems like it's an impossible task when you think goats,
Yeah.
It's like everything that you watch about goats is like, they live in the steepest, nastiest places. You have to be crazy to do this.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. And then you get into goat country. It's not so bad.
Oh, You broke up for a second.
Oh, sorry. I was saying, and then you get into goat country and it's not so bad.
Yeah. And you know what? Like in my experience anyways, there's definitely spots where you're just not getting, right? So
yeah,
sometimes you're just sitting there and you'll watch a goat that's the thing. If you got some time, generally they don't move a ton, but they will, lots of times that nasty, gnarly, like absolute death kind of stuff, there isn't necessarily a ton of good feed there. So, lots of times they will hang out there, but they will make their move and go into some, greener pastures, or, they might get into a little green bowl or whatever, and that's your chance. So sometimes it's just a waiting game, and you don't need to do anything stupid to kill a goat. That's for sure.
Yeah. I have spent a lot of time in the last year while we've been planning our goat hunt here, looking at, success photos of guys in the region that have killed goats. And there's a lot of goats that are not in the Cliffy stuff when you look at the success photos. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, you bet.
So
some of them might have rolled down there though. But.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. That's just like me on the way down when I trip.
Yeah. Well, we've all been there.
Let's hope not, eh?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, I'm just picturing myself, rolling up in a ball in the fetal position, rolling down the mountain. Ah!
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's wicked. So, what are you shooting for a bow right now?
So right now I'm still shooting a carbon spider, a Hoyt carbon spider. So
wicked.
2014, 15 kind of vintage. I just for the temperature and the climate that I seem to be hunting in a lot, that carbon riser is just a game changer for me.
Yeah.
And it's just become like an old friend, right? So I've shot a lot of bows since then, and I just I haven't seen the need to upgrade since that. It's been a great bow. It's don't plan on changing it anytime soon anyways. So.
Yeah, you and I have talked bows quite a bit, and you were like, what do you think of these new bows? And I was like, I don't know. I've shot carbon spiders. I don't think they shoot any better. Like, it's funny that the archery thing's hilarious. How the yearly bow comes out at like it's gonna be a huge leap.
Oh, lots of times, you're picking up 1 or 2 feet per second or a little more, a little more brace height or whatever. And it's funny because, instantly your 1-year-old bow becomes worthless. And, and these things are, I don't think people realize, like, some of these bows, they're worth more than a medium end rifle. We're not even talking budget rifle. Some of these things are over $2,000 for a bow that in 2-3 years is almost worthless. It's just hilarious. Whereas you buy a rifle, I mean, really, you can sell that for what you paid 10 years from now almost, right? So
yeah. An interesting topic is, like, for a guy out chasing caribou, sheep, and goats, what does your arrow setup look like?
Right now I'm shooting a 300 spine gold tip airstrike.
Nice.
I've gone back to a 204 shaft. I went down the rabbit hole of the micro, and for me, that the insert system and everything just wasn't worth it. So I've gone back to like a 204. I don't shoot the factory aluminum insert. I buy a stainless insert. So that gives me some extra weight up front and some extra strength.
Who makes the stainless insert that you shoot?
The one I shoot is actually made by Gold Tip.
Cool.
So, an extra cost for sure and everything, but I can get it right from Gold Tip. And
nice.
So yeah, I'm shooting that with the stainless insert, and then I'm shooting a 4-fletch on the back.
Nice.
Just a smaller fusion vane on the back. So I've gone back and forth to 3 and 4, and I don't know how much of a difference it makes really, but I have noticed it could kind of go a little bit lower profile and smaller and a little bit quieter, I think, than a Blazer 3-fletch. So
yeah,
that's where I've landed right now.
I imagine some of those shots that you're taking can be pretty wind heavy too, right? So maybe the lower profile vane helps.
Exactly. Try and keep that side drift down a bit. Yeah. And then I think the biggest thing though, for me, as far as equipment and all the stuff, the biggest advance that I found is the sights now with these slider sights. Like, I still do a ton of like spot and stock, like call in encounters and thick stuff. So I never wanted to go to a single pin, like full slider, but now, I custom build my full sight with every color pin and every diameter pin I want and whatever. So I finally landed on a 4-pin slider. So I got pins to 50. And after that, I can dial out to over 100. So if I'm jumping something or whatever and stuff happens fast at 43 yards, I can just grab a pin and go. If, on those long shots, I mean, anything over 50 yards, in reality, you better have the time to range and move a sight and do all these things. It's not that's a long shot. So a guy needs to be able to hold dead on at whatever range is just amazing, right? On those sliders.
Yeah, for sure. I actually ran the fuse sight. I ran the same sight a couple seasons ago. That black gold, I think mine was a 3-pin, and I was using the center as my floating. But I since built a 5-pin spot hog slider, and it's basically the same system. I'm not sure if I like it better or worse than the black gold, but they're both good. And it's you're totally right, man. Like, I've been in a couple of situations like hunting in Alberta where you're like, okay, I get close, and then wind changes and they move 20 yards and can't get closer. And, you, like you said, you got to make sure you have the time. Hey.
Yeah, exactly.
It's super cool though. The technology in the bows now is pretty wild, but, it's I don't think archery can be harder, can it?
No. And if it was, like, would you want to do it? I don't know. Well, you do. You and your stick bow guys. I mean, you take a thing that's basically impossible and make it like really impossible.
Yeah.
That's a whole rabbit hole I've never gone down, and I don't even know if I want to touch one of those.
Yeah,
I'm scared I might like it.
You know what's funny about it too is since I really dove into the stick bow thing, I find shooting my compound a heck of a lot easier.
I believe that. Like,
I shoot that stick bow out to 40 all the time. Like, I'll run 50 arrows or 60 arrows through it a day. Like shoot. Well, I don't know however many ends that is, but shoot like a 300 round on like a Vegas 3 spot with the recurve, and it's a nightmare, right? And then you're like, I'm gonna quickly shoot around with the compound, and it's like, okay, this is awesome. Like, this is just the best. And and you know what? Sometimes that's the best training. Like, that's what I found, even with hunting in general. Once I started archery hunting, and you had to get close, and you had to do this or that, and you found out kind of what you could get away with, and what you just learned. I just learned so much from that it makes you a way better rifle hunter too, right? So I don't doubt that shooting that stick bow is totally going to help your proficiency as a compound shooter. Yeah, I think it does for sure. I mean, Ronnie was laughing at me when we're out mule deer hunting last year, and we're like, I can't remember how many hundreds of yards away from a deer. I'm like checking the wind. He's like, "What are you doing? We're gonna cut 200 yards and shoot that thing. Let's go."
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Going
man.
through 3 wind checkers per hunt, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think I drive Ronnie crazy with that thing. He's helped me elk hunt a little bit, and I'm just like constantly on that thing. I don't know, maybe it's an experience thing, but I'm always paying attention to it now.
Yeah. I'm the same way.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh man, so I bet hunting sheep with the bow, like, you know, you've got a few stones with the sheep, right? Or a few stones with the bow, that you're probably doing some pretty big circles to avoid the wind.
Yeah, definitely have, you definitely I've only actually killed 1 stone with the bow, but I've been on a few successful archery sheep hunts, and every time we kill a ram, we find it's very rarely like we see it and we go and kill it that day or whatever. It's like, okay, it's there. This is wrong. That's wrong. This is,
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a series of events that have to line up, and you need the ram to go in the right spot with the right terrain and the right wind and everything. And when that's there, I'd actually say our success rate on the stock is fairly high, but only because we're only going on a stock when it is going to be high success, right? Rather than just blow them out, we'll just sit on them till the wind changes or till they come out of that bowl or that cliff or that whatever. And when they get themselves in a bad spot for them or a good spot for us, then you go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So but even then, sometimes you're going the long way around for sure. Not the easiest way, but the best way.
Yeah. What do you think the most challenging species here in BC is to hunt, maybe for rifle and for bow? What do you think?
For bow, like I say, I'm sure I'll take a lot of heat, but I honestly think caribou with a bow, is my experience. I mean, to get even 100 yards seems to be fairly doable, but to get right in on them and get in on the one you want and whatever. And I mean, everyone has stories of these things just staring at you at 20 yards or whatever. But man, when that's your only weapon and you're out there and whatever, it's a good challenge.
Mm-hmm.
As far as rifle, like I haven't spent a ton of time hunting bighorns just because it is so competitive and whatever, but I'd have to think that's gotta be it for rifle. I mean,
yeah,
pretty high population of guys doing it, and not a lot of legal rams and lots of foot races and stuff like that. So
yeah, you're a long way from bighorns too, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things that I put in some decent draws, and one of these days I'll get that and I'll transition into that. But I don't know, like I say, I haven't hunted them a ton. I have been on a few hunts and stuff, but that to me seems like it's gotta be the hardest. And to be totally honest, like a big scoring mule deer, I just think a mature mule deer in BC right now is a tough thing to come across. Yeah, for sure. It's like some of the areas that I hunt, it's even tough to get a mature mule deer on camera. Exactly. Yeah. No, I worry about our mule deer for sure. It sucks because it's probably one of the same thing. I just love hunting mule deer. It's one of those things that I hope to do for a long, long time. But man, the way things are going with that too, I just hope that we can figure out what we need to do to help those guys out. Because we're sure not on a good trajectory right now. That's for sure.
No. Yeah. How do you, if, okay, $1 million question. If if you were the province and you were king of the world, king of British Columbia, how would you go about changing that?
Mule deer?
Yeah.
Oh man. I'm so torn on this one because I do know how much, like the one area I can speak fairly accurately on in my experience is the Peace Country. And I saw the 2007 die-off, the winter kill happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we have never, ever recovered from that. And so I do realize how weather dependent we are in BC. But I do think that shooting does and some smaller bucks for extended periods of time when the herd is herding isn't probably the best thing as far as building a herd. I'm all for, when a population's able to sustain that, great. But at the same time, I realize that, I don't think the numbers that the hunter harvest that's not the problem. And I hate pulling the only, the hunting lever, because it seems like the only one that the government wants to change. So I think we have, some major habitat issues and stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, like you look at the mule deer basically, in North America, and yeah, there's some populations that are doing well, but in general, they're not doing great. So it's not, I don't know what the smoking gun is. And, I read, everything you read is a different explanation for it, right?
Yep.
Like, we've all read the same stuff and seen the same things and whatever. And I don't know. I struggle with that too, because it seems like, at the end of the day, there's areas that are closed to hunting and the population's still not doing well, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It certainly isn't over hunting, but I think sometimes, hunting the wrong demographic or the wrong age class or sex within the herd at the wrong time, maybe, a little bit more micromanaging that maybe at certain times. And then, some habitat issues and wildlife collisions with vehicles. I mean, and trains and stuff like this. Like we've changed the infrastructure of the province and some of these migration routes.
Mm-hmm.
Don't watch that. Like, in some of these winter range areas, these things are just getting clobbered. So
yeah,
that's not helping either. So
yeah, it's interesting too. And I like to ask that question, and I like to ask that question to, about any species of wildlife. And I like to pose that question to hunters like me. And I like to pose it to biologists and non-hunters and see what everybody says. Right. I also don't know the right answer, but it's really easy for us as hunters to say, oh, the issue is the seasons, right? Because it plays into our hand a bit. And maybe there's many of us that would probably like to see that October any buck season go away, or maybe get rid of some doe seasons or some cow seasons and stuff like that. Right. But then like you read these books from, the 70s and the 80s and the early 90s. Like, I mean, what is it? That Hunting High Country Mule Deer, one of those Eastman's books, he ends the book by saying, well, go do this stuff while you can, because we're putting houses on all the winter migration corridors here in, I think he's in Idaho or Montana or something like that. And he's like, that's how the book ends. He's like, that's a wrap, folks. There's not going to be high country alpine mule deer because the critical habitat they need to make it through the winter we're using. Right. And then, you go back to the 60s and the 70s and you read those, British Columbia caribou ranching books, and read those stories and you hear the stories about them trying to extend grazing leases into the Alpine. And then you hear the stories about them, lobbying for extended moose seasons so that there's more carrying capacity on the land for cattle and stuff like this, right? It's it's like public enemy number one back in the day was grazing associations versus BC Wildlife Foundation when BC Wildlife Foundation came to be, right? It's like when you start really digging into the cause of, what's hurting wildlife the most, it's like I don't think you could put your finger on one thing. I think it's definitely not a single issue. It's a multifaceted issue. There's no doubt about that. And well, what do you think, Tyler? What's your opinion on what would Tyler do if he could make some changes? If I was king of BC, I don't know. I think that's a really. I think first of all, it's a loaded question. I don't know if there's a correct answer at this point, Exactly. Because like economically we rely on the industry here in BC. But like if you had to try to, if your sole focus was game species, you would just be like, okay, let's pause all industry and maybe reduce some hunting opportunity and see what happens, right? That would be like what you would do if you lived in a vacuum, but we don't, right? So I don't know, I think as hunters, we always go to, let's do some predator management, some hardcore predator management in areas where there's been, these highways cut into the landscape by oil, gas, and logging. And then let's maybe let's not give out some cow and calf moose tags and cow elk tags, and maybe let's not open doe seasons. But then on the flip side of that, you see places with the population that is rocking, like southern Alberta, northern Montana, stuff like that. And then you get on the other end of the spectrum where you get crazy CWD numbers, right? Yeah. I know. So I think like, there's that saying in life, what can be measured can be managed. And I think having a measured population of all these different species, gives our biologists the ability to manage it, right? And I think that gets taken away from them. I think they get the tools taken away from them by, politics and people's personal ethos get in the way when, we don't want you to kill grizzly bears, or we don't want you to kill wolves. It sort of hamstrings absolutely. Biologists, right? So to answer your question, I don't know. But I don't know. It's one of those issues where I think we could look to places that are doing really well and have really good populations of, this or that, right? I mean, Alberta just came out with a whole bunch of extra tags for does. I think it's something like every resident, don't quote me on this because I just kind of had a off the cuff conversation with my buddy who is very, regulation interested, like in all of North America. He's actually a great dude, and I'm going to have him on here soon again. My buddy Cole. But I think it's like you can take 4 whitetails, 1 buck, 2 does, and I think most areas are getting 2 mule deer doe tags on a draw, as well as the standard mule deer tag. So like, wow. I think in a lot of the province, I think you'll be able to take 6 deer. Oh, Yeah, and he is stressing. He's a Alberta resident, and he's like, that's going to be a wrap on the good days of deer hunting in Alberta, right? So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what happens there, and it'll be interesting to see if those regulations change as time goes on. But it's like a lot of those areas have proposed deer calls anyways for CWD, right? And all they do is ship them or shoot them from, a helicopter or hire sharpshooters, and then they pull the heads off to send them in for, can't remember the word, but they check the head, and then they push the rest into a pit, right? It's very sad.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But like I think the prevalence of CWD in those areas is pretty wild. But again, I mean, I think there's quite a few places in the US that have had CWD for 30 years and their populations are doing pretty good. So I don't know. It's interesting times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man. So I don't know. I normally end these things. I spent a good deal of time talking there about that, but I normally end these things with, if there's one thing you could change about hunting, or what do you think the biggest threat to hunting is? But we kind of already did some doom and gloom stuff just now.
Yeah.
So I'd say, I already asked you kind of what keeps you up at night, but what are you most excited for in the coming years? Is it getting your kids out hunting? Is it, maybe some new adventures, maybe hunting outside of BC? What are you most excited for in the future here, Chris?
Yeah. I'd say at this point, I want to try and do some US stuff a bit, some deer, elk, or antelope type stuff for myself personally. I got some, starting to apply to some states and stuff down there.
Cool.
But in reality right now at this stage, I got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old boys who just like can't get enough of shooting bows and fishing and hunting and
I love it,
all that stuff. So I've had the blessing of shooting a couple deer in the blind with them, right in the blind with me, and shot a couple black bear with them right there with archery, and recovered some moose and stuff like that. So it's just been an absolute riot seeing this journey that we're on right now with them, and my nephew, my brother and his are really good buddy. Their boys were 10 and 11 this year. So we've got both of them on some just beauty black bears, their first black bears. So I think for now, like for me, it's going to be a great couple of years of guiding them to some, helping them make some mistakes and learn some lessons. And it's just going to be a good time to be a dad and to follow them around for a while. So that's probably, in reality, that's on my, that's down the sights for me, which I can't wait for. And
no
I think you're in a similar situation too, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah. My kids are youngest. My eldest will be 5 in October here. They're younger. Yeah. So I got a ways to go, but my eldest, just all she wants to do is be in the woods. Right. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool. It's fun. It's fun to make little people that want to hang out with you. Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, it's been a blast seeing them and then getting them out, like helping them, getting them to track an animal or do this or do that. Just, it's funny because you do it for so long and then you kind of lose the awe of a lot of it. Right. So you take them out and the stuff that they pick up on or notice or see or smell, or it's just amazing. Right. It just takes you back to, wow. Like I don't even really look at that or think about that anymore. And these are all things that are just like huge for them, or they're learning about whatever, or seeing something that you've seen a million times, or just taking them out grouse hunting, right? It's been so fun to see them, we're out there, we go after work or whatever, and we go try and shoot a few chickens, and it's just a riot. So.
Yeah, no kidding. I take my eldest on the trail cam circuit all the time, and she's just stoked on it,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'll crowd it over the phone when you're downloading the photos to see what's on there.
Oh yeah. I mean, although if there's flowers wherever we are, it's game over. She's running off picking flowers, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that was a real quick hour. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, and I look forward to sharing hunting camp with you this fall.
Yeah, sounds good, Tyler. I can't wait, and we'll stay in touch.
For sure. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave us a review. If you want to support the podcast, please check out the gear on our website at wildernesslocals.net.